All right, so today y'all are here for the first session of the last day of the virtual Clean Fuels Summit. If you were with us yesterday, we had great presentations with the Clean Fuels kind of update about the two Clean Cities coalitions and what our activities are doing, what progress we're making. And then we had our keynote speaker from Entergy from the Keystone Labs Innovation, talking about the way that Entergy is taking a look at how their entire industry works and the products that they give to their consumers and customers. And today we're hearing from Mike McDonald with UPS, and we're going to be discussing the future of freight and sustainable shipping, specifically what UPS is doing and how they look at the entire supply chain and the way they work going forward. But first, we want to give you a little update about who we are with Louisiana Clean Fuels and the Southeast Louisiana Clean Fuel Partnership. We're part of a group called the Clean Cities Coalitions, and Clean Cities was started by the Department of Energy back during the Clean Air Act. And currently we have approximately 80 Clean Cities coalitions across the country. And if you do not have a Clean Cities coalition in your territory, just look to one nearby you and you'll find that we're all happy to help. So where does Clean Cities fit in within the Department of Energy? Within the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Division of the DOE, there is the Vehicle Technology Office. And within the Vehicle Technology Office, nestled in over here, is technology integration. And that is where Clean Cities lives within the Department of Energy. Now, each of our Clean Cities coalitions across the country, we are independent. We are designated as Clean Cities coalitions under the DOE, but we have our own structures. Louisiana Clean Fuels is an independent nonprofit that receives additional support from the Louisiana Department of Natural Resources, and other Clean Cities coalitions may be within their COGS, within their planning commissions or state energy offices, or independent nonprofits just like us. And one of the great things about Clean Cities is when you work with us, you're not working with like a paid industry support group. We do not lobby on behalf of anyone, and we are here to help you. Whatever your fleet or your individual driving needs are, we want to find a solution that works best for you because we want you to have the best experience possible. So if we don't have an answer to a question, if it gets beyond our pay grade or it's technical to the fact that you need deeper assistance, we can get that for you as well. So today, we originally were going to have two presenters today. Today, Richard Cawley was not able to join us with something that just came up at the last minute, and it was unavoidable. He is not able to be here today. We will hear from him again someday in the future. We'll bring him back. But today, we are going to be featuring Mike McDonald. He is the Corporate Automotive Senior Director of Sustainability and Government Affairs at UPS. So, Mike, you want to get started?
Yes, thank you, Ann and team, for inviting me to this function so I could give a perspective on UPS, what we've done today. And when I say today, I mean since we've started this journey and also what we're looking towards for the future of tomorrow. Next, please. Our CEO, Carol Tomei, said UPS is committed to creating a more sustainable company and world. We are customer first, people-led, and innovation-driven, and we'll use our scale for impact in 2021 and beyond. And it's fascinating that she would say that, because within that, I pulled out the word sustainable, innovation-driven, and also scale, because all three of these ingredients are very important to move in the direction that we're moving and to keep moving while we work for the future to come upon us. You can take sustainability, I kind of look at it in several different ways, depending on what group you're speaking with. If you're speaking with folks that are committed to zero emissions vehicles, to them, that is the goal of sustainability. If you're talking to folks that are looking at LNG, CNG, and RNG, to them, that is the solution for sustainability. But in all of those things, innovation driven is what pushes the envelope forward, no matter which technology it is, because the minute you stop the innovation, then the ideas stop, the moving forward stops, you're stuck in a bit of a quandary. And the impact, or the scale for impact, for us, it's huge. The size of this company, it enables us to make choices that maybe sometimes don't exactly work out, but we can absorb them. And it gives us the ability to move a little faster than some of the other companies. Next slide, please, Ann. Who is United Parcel Service? I would venture to say during this pandemic, that's a pretty easy answer. With the deliveries increasing, UPS, you could just be the brown truck that delivers your package to your door, whether it be next day, whether it be an important letter, an important package. That's what UPS on a large scale is known for. But we also do other things, like we do logistics, we do freight forwarding. We look at other technologies to push the business forward. And within that, if you look at the pictorial on this slide, you'll look at the first slide, where right now we deliver about 29.5 million packages daily globally, which comes out about 5.5 billion packages annually. But we can't do that without our 495,000 plus employees worldwide that are very dedicated, and with them we could not move those packages. If you go over to the next picture, we can't do anything without vehicles. And currently we own probably about 125,000 or so vehicles that UPS actually owns. We bought them, we use them till the end of life, and then we take them out of service. We generally never resell our equipment. Also part of that, or within that, which kind of lends itself to this conversation, is our alternative fuel fleet, or advanced propulsion fleet, which is 10,300 plus and still growing. The next box over is also our aircraft. Right now we have about 572 aircraft between leased and owned aircraft. Within that, there is the ability to save metric tons of emissions just by looking at the way you ship things, maybe not necessarily all the way from point A to point B with an aircraft. Maybe in between, you're using a truck, you're using the rail system, and that's just a way to find the best way to reduce your emissions while you're looking for a solution for the bigger problem. Next will be buildings. So we currently have 2,500 global facilities, and of course, with facilities with conveyors comes, electricity and energy, and so that's another source of energy, or another source of emissions that's given off. So in this particular business that we're in, it benefits a lot of people, especially during times like COVID, where we help deliver the vaccine, but also within that, it also generates emissions that part of our sustainable plan is to reduce those emissions over time, which we have been up to date. Currently, we're like 3% of the global GNP that we move daily, and we also have about 40,000 global access points. And you might have seen UPS lockers outside of maybe a 7-Eleven, or outside of maybe in Midtown Manhattan next to the 43rd Street building. Just other options or other means of availability to get your package in our system and move it from point A to point B. Next slide, please, Ann. So the question, the overarching question, not just for UPS, but for other companies, is why the change and why now? Well, globally, if you've been paying attention for probably the last 3 or 4 years, the attention being paid to our environment, especially air pollutants, has not only been on the rise within our country, but more so globally, and even to the point of globally where they may actually be a little ahead of us as far as addressing those concerns. But if you look at the overarching reasons for it, especially within the last year and a half, we fear 24% of global energy-related emissions comes from heavy transport. And by heavy transport, I don't just mean a Class 8 vehicle driving down the road, but I'm also talking about ships, freight, trains, and aircraft. So when they say heavy transport, probably I won't say the easiest, but probably the quickest change could probably come in the area of vehicles, as opposed to the area of, say, converting a cruise ship from the current fuel that they use to, say, a hydrogen fuel platform. So that would take a little more effort just because of the scale of the equipment itself. 90% of the worldwide, 90% of people are like breathe polluted air. I mean, if you've ever seen pictures of China, for instance, Shanghai, Beijing, places like this, there are days when you can barely see 100 feet in front of yourself. And that just lends itself to there. But we also have places within this country where the air is not considered to be very good, especially in urban environments, city environments, around factories, or those type of scenarios. 21% of the total U.S. retail sales are conducted by e-commerce, and that's up from 19% last year. And if you're paying attention on Saturday, and if you have nothing better to do, you can set up a lawn chair and sit outside on your porch and count the amount of delivery trucks from all the delivery companies that come into your neighborhood on the weekend. That kind of gives you an idea of just the shift from going to the mall or your local strip mall, how the shift has changed to just point and click. And sometimes without any real thought about maybe spreading out those deliveries and maybe taking that one extra trip to your house out of the mix and maybe have all your things delivered in one shot. So those options are out there for different companies to do different things. But of course, some of the increase in heavy equipment use when it comes to delivery is actually customer driven. And of course, $5 billion is spent globally on digital commerce platforms, which lends itself to e-commerce and the ease it is to order what you need online, and the ease of what it takes to return it if it's not exactly what you wanted. Next, please. So sustainability from a UPS standpoint. I just threw down a couple of quick bullet points. They've been in the press. You could probably go to the UPS sustainability page and pull up more things of what we're doing in the SASB report and things like that. But just lately, in general, some of the things that probably come to mind easiest are we've put our vehicle order in, where we've ordered more CNG or natural gas vehicles, and that includes Class 8 tractors as well as delivery vehicles. And where that's important is because these vehicles, these Class 8 vehicles and these package delivery vehicles are CNG, we're able to utilize RNG in place of CNG to further reduce emissions. It's been put out there probably a couple of years now that we pre-ordered 125 Tesla tractors as our choice, short-term, hedging our bets that will fit our duty cycle, but not to mistake that with us just looking only at Tesla. We always consider other options, not just one equipment manufacturer. And when I spoke a bit about the RNG, we've committed or we've contracted at a minimum 250 gallons equivalent of RNG, but that contract is also open to purchasing more. That's something we also constantly look at too. I do have people who come to me and ask me to maybe put them in touch with folks. And even just this year, the amount of traffic when it comes to RNG has been incredible with the rise on the use rate. I believe last year, just from last year, or I should say from 2019 to 21, we've almost doubled our RNG use compared to CNG. But when we first started out around 2018, in that area, comparing the two is pretty much even at that time. And of course, we have facilities which, of course, use energy to run conveyor belts. And so as we currently have 18 buildings that received the green building certification, but that now has become part of our sustainability effort with not just our vehicles, but just looking at all aspects of the building. This is an older depiction of our alternative fuel station footprint. It may have changed slightly over the past year or two, but it kind of gives you an idea sometimes of why we go where we go. And a lot of folks ask us why we spend so much time out in California. But if you look at the California footprint, it lends itself because of the things that they do, it lends itself to make it easier for us to take advantage of the CNG, RNG, or the auto gas, or whatever it is, the renewable diesel. So for some reason, it just lends itself, that environment, to be able to try different things and not just be one thing, because there are spots in the country that you look at just on this map where we have nothing in, and that's not because we don't want to go there, but it still has to make business sense. We just can't put the infrastructure, vehicles, and everything in place if the business model does not support it, because at the end of the day, we are able to put these things in place because of the business and the growth of the business. Next slide, please, Ann. So this slide, I think, is really interesting. It kind of puts a visual to the amount of, I guess you could say, offset to just the gas and diesel part of the business. We anticipate, or we forecasted by the end of 2021, that 29% of our ground gallons will actually be of an alternative fuel variety. And if you look at the boxes, they go from left to right. And I'll give you, for instance, the first box, just what we anticipate for 2021 is to use 43 million combined gallons of CNG, LNG. But if you look at the bottom of the box, we've already used from 2014, anticipated to the end of 2021, 485 million gallons. That's a lot of fuel just for CNG, LNG. So if you think about it, that amount of fuel is displacing diesel that would have normally been in those vehicles. And if you go another box over, that takes into account the RNG, and 144 million gallons, excuse me, that we anticipate using this year. But since 2019, I'm sorry, 67 million gallons this year, but since 2019, it's been 144 million gallons. So that just kind of gives you, as you go from left to right, it just gives you an idea of what we anticipate the fuel displacement to be this year for diesel and gasoline, but also, since we've started this journey on these specific fuels, how much we've used year to date. Next slide, please, Ann. Now, I call this the slide, the ultimate infrastructure slide. This slide is how nice it would be if years down the road we got to a point, and not just UPS, but other companies, if you got to the point where you could utilize everything out there and the technology that was available, the innovation was mature enough to where you could use solar and wind power and battery storage and microgrids and just fuels and within using all those, where a building could basically use a fuel cell vehicle, renewable diesel vehicle, CNG, RNG, LNG, where this building could be a near zero building. As close as you can get to zero or near zero, just based off of the setup of the building, the options from the utility company, the infrastructure available, the innovation, and the vehicles that you currently had. If you could somehow get that kind of a setup in the building, and surprisingly enough, that's what we're working on now. Next slide, please, Ann. So this is one of our buildings in California, and I was just taking a visit because I had not been out there in a while. And the intent of this building is, when we built it, is to be a near zero building. So this will be our first that we're attempting to build, and that's on the right screen. Now on the left screen, you see currently this is our Class 8 tractor fleet in that building right now. They're just lined up on both sides of the fence, and down the middle we have the CNG, RNG setup that these tractors are hooked up to. Now, just in a picture like this, if you're speaking to electric, just this picture right here will give you the idea of just some of the difficulties as we move towards electric that this has. You see these tractors currently parked right next to each other in a spot. Well, when you bring on, when you introduce electricity into it, you may have a tractor, an open spot with a charger in it, and then another tractor, and then a another tractor, another open spot. So you could possibly have a setup where you have a charger that actually charges 2 tractors, but in doing that, you give up a space. So that's one of the concerns when you're electric and infrastructure is, of course, space, setup, and other things. But the intent of me showing you this slide is that, again, innovation, you have to continue to move forward, and scale does matter when you take on projects like this. Next slide, please. The rolling laboratory. Anybody who has heard UPS speak on the transportation side of the fence, we talk about the rolling laboratory. I've spoken about it. My counterparts have spoken about it. We've referred to it over the years. Every year we kind of change up the infographics, but I use this infographics because this particular one kind of shows everything that we have our hands in, at least from a vehicle perspective. If you look at the top left, it talks about, you know, the Class 8 feeder, which could run off of LNG, renewable natural gas, compressed natural gas. It shows a package vehicle up in the driveway, which could be a plug-in hybrid. It could be a hydraulic hybrid. It could be a propane vehicle, a CNG vehicle. And if you go further to the right and you follow it, it goes to urban deliveries, which we talk about, again, hydraulic hybrids, electric hybrids, plug-in hybrids, e-bikes, all the things that run strictly on some type of electricity, which takes out of it the emissions totally, but also takes out the noise pollution. So it's a more friendly, and if you've been watching the news, you look at places like Los Angeles, you look at places like New York City, where they're coming up with green zones where they're going to require, or they're looking to require anybody who delivers within these municipalities that they have to have some kind of electric vehicle to make the deliveries in order to reduce the emissions and all reduce the noise, and for it to be a better environment, especially for underserved communities. And then, of course, you have the bottom, which would be considered the latest, where we talk about electric Class 8 tractors, possibly fuel cell tractors, package cars of the future, where if you look at the buildings in the background, it looks like they have Wi-Fi, and also the vehicle looks like it's got Wi-Fi. So we start talking about vehicle-to-vehicle communication. We start talking about vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, traffic lights, you know, which may seem to us futuristic, but a lot of folks are actually working on these things right now as we speak, trying to figure out how to currently integrate them in our transportation system now. Next slide, please, Ann. This is where UPS currently sits as of January, as far as our fleet of, and I'll say, advanced propulsion and not alternative fuel, because there's going to be a point where the term alternative fuel should probably be moved to just fuel, because it should be at that point in every day and not just an off-the-shelf option that is not readily available. So if you look on the left side, currently we have about 8,500 or more vehicles. And what I highlight in red, which is what has done the best for us year to date. And we make no bones about it. CNG, RNG has been excellent for us up to this point, but that's not to say that we've left everything else behind, because we still look at plug-in electric, full electric, hydraulic hybrids. We're working on legislation for electric bikes and in cities. So there's still a lot going on. But conversely, when you look on the right side for international, they have a heavy push or a heavy use on propane vehicles. So again, they're depending on the area, even within this country, and I'm going to emphasize, even within this country, not everyone is heading towards electric and taking their eyes off of everything else. Next slide, please, Ann. Timeless lessons. And with every one of these webinars I've done lately, you start to notice a pattern. A year ago, 2 years ago, it was we talked about equipment availability, technology, what was out there, what was not out there. Would the folks who were starting out with the new technology, would they survive? Do you wait and see? There's so many questions. This year, it's been more about infrastructure. And that's even been around utilities and how utilities can get involved to help companies like UPS move forward and getting to the goal of electricity quicker. So oftentimes we talk about the leading edge and the leading edge. In our particular case, because of the scale, sometimes the leading edge is the bleeding edge for us because we're willing to step out there and take a chance, and it does come with pain. And that is the second point. Any new technology, regardless of how the technology is touted, there has to be bugs that are worked out, and there has to be people who are willing to take that on, knowing that you will have issues with it until the issues straighten out over time, the technology becomes better, and technology becomes more prevalent to where it's not just an oddity in the market. Probably the most important thing in all of this is preparation cannot be overlooked. You have to have a plan, and your plan cannot be based on UPS's plan or Coca-Cola's plan or Bob Smith's plan. Your company has to have a plan that is made up to accommodate their business. UPS, and I never say never, but UPS right now has to find vehicles, infrastructure that has to fit in our current environment. We cannot change our business model around vehicles. We have to make sure that the vehicles can accommodate our business model. And there's always unknowns. You will never know everything there is to know about everything when it comes to new technology. Those things you'll learn from people who are using it, those things you'll learn from the sales team, those things that you'll learn from the infrastructure team, the utility team. So always keep your ears open for something that you don't know that will help you make better decisions when you make that purchase. Next slide, please, Ann. Zero emissions, future challenges. And at first I put battery electric, but I changed it to zero emissions because people have very strong feelings about whether it's going to be battery electric or hydrogen electric. It just really depends on what camp you're on. So I put zero electric because it includes both camps. Again, very early planning. You have to have so much more when it comes to utility participation and infrastructure participation. In our case, our buildings, we have some old buildings, we have some new buildings. The new buildings can be built to accommodate the needs for the future, but our old buildings, it takes time for the utilities to come in, evaluate what you have, what you need, what you'll need today, and what you'll need 5 or 10 years from now. Enter the highway with caution. There are several groups, companies, startups. There's just so much to go through that you need to do diligence to before you jump in, to kind of at least get your plan and your format and in what sequence you plan to do things. You also have to take into account vehicle purchasing cycle. You will not buy, just for instance, 10 brand new Class A trucks and then feel like you have to run out in 2 years and buy an electric trucks because of legislation. So it's very important that you look at your vehicle purchasing cycle and where that fits or where it lends itself when it comes to moving forward. There's also energy cost and availability. You have a legislative environment. Are you being pushed into going electric? Are you being pushed into low carbon situation? Is it such that your state is open to bridge fuels between getting from where we are to electric, where you accept RNG, LNG, LPG in between, or are you a state where it's all or nothing and it doesn't make sense for somebody to purchase a vehicle or bridge vehicle now? You might as well just wait for, look at electric on where you plan to go with that vehicle. Technician training and vehicle support is huge, especially for a fleet where you fix your own vehicles. Currently, electricity and training has different levels. Your folks have to be certified on what they can work on and to what level they can work on. And also, when you're purchasing from a lot of these companies that are kind of new in electric, you have to make sure that that vehicle can be supported. You don't want that vehicle on your fence when you're trying to make money and you cannot get that vehicle fixed. We've had challenges in the past with that, so that's something we're very cognizant of. And of course, cost of equipment without incentives. What we look at is how can we move forward and do the right thing without the use of incentives, because incentives is not a good business plan. And incentives only go so far. We have to get to a point to where there's close enough parity where companies can make purchases or make decisions based on the cost of vehicles now and in the future, and not shy away from the whole thing, hoping that if you wait long enough, just the price of equipment will go down. There's got to be some give and take somewhere in there where, and I don't know what that will take, but we can get to a point where we can just buy vehicles in our normal vehicle purchasing cycle. Future opportunities. It's no, it's out there that we partnered with Arrival for 10,000 vehicles that we're looking forward to. It brings a futuristic technology. It lends itself to advanced safety features, lane departure, automatic emergency braking, 360 view around your whole vehicle. So just the use of the electricity itself and the technology itself lends itself to other things that could be part of the vehicle and not just something that you get in, you start up and you drive. It could lend itself to so much more predictive maintenance over the air while you're on the road, where if you're driving a vehicle and it has, say, a fault, it communicates directly with your shop. So when the vehicle comes in the shop is already prepared to fix its vehicle and eliminate downtime. Again, I spoke earlier about vehicle to vehicle or vehicle to infrastructure communication enhancements, where buses communicate with traffic lights and emergency vehicles communicate with traffic lights and those kind of things. I spoke about predictive real-time maintenance, of course, reduce noise pollution, reduce air pollution, and those things reduce the self-to-earth environments and last mile delivery. Next slide, Ann. And these are just some of the things I threw in at the end that we have going on. We have, in the lower left, we have the e-bike by Rydell and Silver Eagle that we're trying to use in certain areas. We're using in some areas, and we're trying to legislatively get it so we can use in other areas. We have the bottom right, which is a UPS drone that we've been testing to use for package delivery at short distances when it comes to medical or maybe senior living, to help make that a little quicker, a little less emissions, and just a quicker delivery for those kind of situations. The top right, again, I spoke to it about lockers, UPS lockers for easy access points where you don't necessarily have to go to a building if you live like in an urban environment, where you can just have it delivered to the locker and on your way home. If you happen to be a commuter that walks or take a bus, you can just walk right to the locker and pick your package up instead of wait for delivery and possibly miss it and then have to set up a second delivery. And of course, the top left is our newest toy, which is a vertical lift electric aircraft that we are currently testing to also deliver packages. So very exciting times right now. Moving forward, we have other things going on with delivery. We have Orion, which folks are unfamiliar with, which reduces miles, you reduce fuel. We've spent about $1 billion the last decade just in alternative fuel, whether it be infrastructure, vehicles, anything to do with it. So we're constantly in a state of motion. We're agnostic when it comes to different types of technologies because it leaves the door open for things that come down the pipe that we could possibly test if we feel that it fits into our duty cycle. Thank you, Ann.
It'd help if I unmuted myself. You think I'd have that down by now after all the webinars we've been doing. Thank you so much, Mike. That's so interesting. Now I've seen the demo of the the drones where they work with the delivery trucks. Is
Mhm.
that still how they're focused? Like the delivery truck will be a larger truck, will be stopped
Yes.
on the interstate, and the drone will go off, which prevents the larger truck from having to go into each individual like subdivision or side street. Is that how it operates?
Yes, and then that's still one of the options they have, because they still have to work out. You know, when you start dealing with FAA rules, of course you have to deal with line of sight and how far can it be to where you can't see it. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of rules that doesn't interfere actually with an airlines, and that's in our freight forwarding, not freight forward. I'm sorry, flight forward group is the group that is working with the drones and working with the vertical lift aircraft. So from my department, we look predominantly at the vehicles, as you know, but then we also have an energy team. We have an energy team that looks at just CNG, RNG, gas type things, and then we have a team that looks at electric, and an engineering team that looks at electric right now. So we have a bunch of different groups right now that are working on different things, and we're getting ready to start coming back together to kind of see where we're going, map out what the future looks like, but not so far out, because let's face it, when you make a goal for 20 years, that lends itself to a lot of changing. There are a lot of changes within 10 years. So you give yourself a lot of play, but we don't believe in setting a goal out necessarily that far, because we want to make progress. We want to be realistic, and you don't know what the next 5 years will hold. We can go from hardly any vehicles today to 3 years from now or next year, where the floodgates just open up and we start with all the electric vehicles hit the market, and now you have a scramble with utilities try to get places ready. So it's very exciting and very crazy times right now.
Yeah, and we all know what 1 year can do to change everything.
Yes,
Right
I
now.
think we've lived that. Yes.
Yeah. So let alone planning for 20 years, but you still got to do it. So I have a question before we get to some of the audience questions. When you're making decisions about, what to run, what vehicles to run in each state, in addition to the existing fueling infrastructure that each state has, what kinds of laws, policies, and incentives help or may hinder a state's ability to get these cleaner vehicles operating in their state? Like, is direct procurement an issue for y'all, or are you able to, because of the way your fleets are set up, it hasn't affected anything yet?
Yeah, that does not affect us right now, because we've not gotten in a situation where we've had an issue with that. We've had some. I've looked at that for another reason, brought other people into it, but when I talk to our procurement team, we've not had a problem. Now, that might be just because of the OEMs that we're getting the equipment from. I mean, the OEMs are all in the US. Now, I don't know if that's the difference, because if you think about it, all the vehicles that come in here basically have to be CARB certified, so you can run it anywhere in the country and not have to worry about it. Now, people buying equipment in New York don't care about being CARB certified, maybe, but for us, if it's CARB certified, we can run it everywhere. That's not an issue. But there are certain operational needs, and I'll give you, for instance, you can't take say like let's just use an electric package car that runs 50 miles. Well, you're not going to stick that in Wyoming. Mm-hmm. There's just certain environments that you just can't, business-wise, you can't make a decision like that. But right now, the reason most places are going to California is because realistically, they offer money to help you get started. I mean, that's realistic. And because you're a business, you still have to look at things business. You just can't go out and buy 100 electric trucks and have no way to pay for it, not have the infrastructure in place. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And sometimes the laws prevent us from using our equipment in certain places. Like we run, say, for instance, triple trailers in some place in the country. Well, we can't run those everywhere. But what if we're running triples and we have a CNG tractor that's pulling it? Well, what if you can't run the triples, which precludes you from using that CNG tractor, or the laws are such that you can't use that CNG, well, you miss the opportunity for the emissions reduction, which would help the state or locality or things like that. So there's a lot of different issues and laws. I mean, I don't want to be specific about some of the things that we run into right now because I don't think it'd be fair because we would not have anybody else defend themselves. Yes, we have operational issues in places. We have legislative issues in places. We have states where, for instance, New Jersey is adapting California's CARB rule. So now not only you worry about California, now you have to worry about what are you going to do in New Jersey? You know, it's just a lot of things. So let me just say right now, we have a team where we're putting together a roadmap for us because we can't be everywhere at the same time right now. So we have to pick places that from a business perspective, a cost perspective, a legislative perspective, or an opportunity perspective. It's all costs when it comes to electricity. All that has to be put together before you can make a rational decision. It cannot be a knee-jerk decision.
Awesome. Okay, so oh, I couldn't understand my own note here. Well, I have one last question before we go through. So we have a RNG facility in the state of Louisiana at a landfill. If there are landfills across the country that are starting to produce high quality RNG, is there a central contact or someone at UPS they should reach out to in order to try to get on their list of places to fuel up?
I'll be honest with you, Ann, I've been inundated with that request. I've tried. I don't normally give out contacts because I just don't do it because
Too much.
Because then these folks get innovative. So what I do is I basically screen, and then I ask the folks. I'm kind of like an intermediary. I ask them, "Are you guys at capacity? Are you still looking?" And based on that is what I do with that information. If that makes sense. So I don't just wholesale just keep because they'll never get their day jobs done if they're constantly trying to.
Well, it's good to know that there's a lot of RNG facilities out there, you know, that feel like they have enough capacity to take on more customers.
Absolutely.
Right. So we do have a couple questions here.
Sure.
This is someone asking for a contact. Is there a contact at UPS to ask questions on the CNG fleet trucks?
Oh, they can contact me. That's fine, and I can either get the answer or direct them to someone who works with them more closely now.
Sure, and we'll go back to this. I'll go back to your slide so they can see your contact information there while we ask you the last question that I have up here. So the Tesla tractors, they've heard that there are weight concerns, and what is the future electric in industry? Oh, he maybe had a typo. He was asking about the electric industry very weight conscious.
Well,
are there issues on that?
Right now, there's there was the government weight exemption for batteries. I guess right now the concern really is the distance right now that the trucks currently go. The current Class 8s that are being tested have distance limitations. What Tesla was doing was they were offering a longer distance tractor, which we're not, they're very proprietary in what they do, so we don't know all the ins and outs. But the thought is the more distance that you travel, the more batteries you need, thus the more weight you're carrying. I don't know because we don't have a Tesla tractor yet, so it's kind of hard to. Because I'm one of those folks that until that vehicle is in our possession, so we can actually run it in our duty cycle, you can tell me anything. That's just because the reality of it is, if you want to get a really good if you want to get a really good feel of equipment, talk to the people who have bought it and run it. That way you'll get truth. Because I found, which is kind of funny, you asked that question with municipalities and buses. If you talk to a fleet manager of a municipality who's running electric buses 3 years ago and now, you could get a true picture of the of the struggles they've had to get to the point to where they are. So again, until that truck is in our fleet, running the miles that it's supposed to run, they can tell me anything they want to tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. Once y'all get those, it'll put you
Yeah,
through your
it's a
rolling
different
lab
game.
process. Yeah, and then if it works, you'll stick with it, and as the vehicles improve, I'm sure you'll make the changes. And you know, early
Absolutely.
natural gas fleets had the same thing. They had a lot of issues adapting and learning, and some of the vehicles didn't work so well, and some of them will work great. Those were the early issues of adopting
Sure.
with CNG, and the same thing with electric. We're going to be going through the same process as well with that. All right, so let me see there. Okay, we're done with those questions. And there's something in the chat here. Let's make sure that it's nothing that we need to manage. You have gotten a thank you for a great presentation from Barry Carr.
Thank you, Barry.
Okay. All right, so if you missed some of our sessions yesterday, or, now I know what my note meant. You had mentioned earlier about early planning with electrification and the heavy duty fleets. We do have a webinar. If you look right here, multi-port megawatt charging systems. We have a part 1 and part 2 webinar where we tackle that very topic of what do fleets and utilities need to do to prepare for heavy duty electric vehicles. And there is a lot of work. I mean, the work needs to start now.
Yes.
If you're going to be purchasing a vehicle 5 to 10 years from now.
Absolutely.
And planning. So we had some great webinars, and this webinar will also be saved on our YouTube page here for Louisiana Clean Fuels. So I just want to put a pitch out there. Y'all go and check. We had a lot of great webinars last year. And again, this one will be on there as well. All right, next up today, since Michael is not the only presentation that we have today, we have at 1 o'clock, the Louisiana Governor's Climate Initiative Task Force, where Dr. Shakar Brown, he is the Secretary of the DEQ, and Camille Manning-Broom, who is the President and CEO for the Center for Planning Excellence. They are both task force members, and this session is going to be moderated by Lindsay Cooper, who works in the governor's office in the coastal department, and she is the project manager for our climate task force. And myself, as a climate task force subcommittee member for transportation, I'll be participating in this as well, just kind of additional Q&A. But if you want to find out what our state's administration is doing to prepare us for net zero in 2050, and all the work that we've been doing and we're going to continue to do to get to that proposal to send back to the governor, this is a session for you at 1 p.m. And if you have not registered for this one individually, again, you can go to our webpage at louisianacleanfuels.org under events. Here it says meeting info.php, but you can, if you're just following the tabs, you can go to events. It'll be the top event up there. And then at 3 p.m., we have planning for resiliency. We're going to be looking at electric vehicles and public fleets and the planning that has to go into it, some of the infrastructure solutions, some of the roadblocks and considerations. So it's going to be a panel discussion where we're going to have experts from all different areas talking about just the challenges and the benefits of electrification in public fleets. All right, so thank you all, and thank you, Michael, for a fantastic presentation. It's really interesting to find out the things that y'all are doing and the innovations that UPS is coming up with. And we want to thank our sponsor, Entergy. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next sessions at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock.